Everybody, welcome in to the Tuesday live stream here on the On Texas Football channel. Off we go. Tuesday brought to you by Texas Electricity Ratings as we get you going. Aaron Hogan, Rod Babers, C.J. Vogel, welcome in on what's a beautiful day in Austin, Texas. Wherever you are, hopefully the same is the case. Getting some sunshine for the first time in a little while and feels pretty good as we crank this thing up with a lot to do, a lot to discuss, and having a good time with you tonight talking Texas football. We found out today the opener, which we know is August 31st. Got a game time on that. It's going to be a hot one for the third straight year for the Longhorns. We'll dive in. And guys, not that we're counting days, but yes, we kind of are. It's 48 days until Texas officially becomes a member of the SEC. 62 days to the start of SEC Media Days up in Dallas in the middle of July. And then a mere 108 days to the start of the college football season when Texas hosts Colorado State at 2:30 in the afternoon, gentlemen. 2:30 in the afternoon. Going to be a little warm into your Labor Day weekend.
It's going to be hot. It's going to be hot, man. There's no doubt about it. This is why it's part of the reason that Sark is obsessed with playing so many guys, not only because of the depth, but I think he just understands the logistics of playing football in the great state of Texas. For the first part of that, of that campaign, it's going to be really, really hot. And I mean, it's not going to really change going to the SEC. It just gets more humid as you go further and further east. So, yeah, Texas playing a lot of guys early. Sark has even said that he wants to play, a lot of guys early on in the first kind of 3-4 games of the season. I think that's kind of to figure out exactly who's earned the trust of the coaches and then really solidify their rotations. But Sark wants to make sure guys are fresh, man. Guys aren't going to be worn out by that heat because Sark's going to be playing so many dudes.
It's interesting. C.J. Sark, even down at the Texas Touchdown Club of Houston last week, was talking about kind of his experience in the NFL and how long the season can be. That month of September, they're going to try to win football games, but they're also going to try to get a lot of guys some experience because they're going to need everybody. Sark was pretty clear that the goal is to be playing on January the 20th, which is the national championship game. That's where they want to be this year. And if you're going to do that, that's a lot of football. That's and the young guys that we know, all the early enrollees and the portal guys, you got to get them their feet wet early in the season, which games like, as we talk about, 108 days from now, that's important to get them on the field against Colorado State, against the UTSAs, the Louisiana Monroes of the world, to make sure they're ready to contribute when you get to the meat of the SEC schedule.
Yeah, absolutely. And fortunately for Texas, they just had 17 or 18 early enrollees. So these guys have a leg up on common freshmen across the country. And of course, other programs will have, their fair share of early enrollees from the most recent signing class. But when you have 17 or 18, that's a pretty significant amount of guys, of course, going through in a full spring, going through an off-season workout, a summer conditioning, and full fall camp. Remember, Texas had a number of guys last year that contributed that didn't have any type of spring conditioning or spring ball. Derek Williams being the most notable. Kelvin Banks didn't do it as well. So they're recruiting top-end guys that can certainly come in and contend and compete and contribute right away. But again, having that leg up gives you an opportunity to get on the field quicker. Texas also went out and added 10 guys out of the portal that have a lot of experience. They have a lot of snaps under their belt. Jermaine Lole, the most recent 1,600 snaps from Louisville, flipped them from Oklahoma. I know Oklahoma had the big win with Dominic Williams, but they're still short of bodies on that defensive line group. So if you're able to go out there and steal what would have been a contributor from them and add them to your room, it's just as big of a win, and it adds to the emphasis to your room on the defensive line. Right now, you start looking at all those dates that you mentioned, Darren. You better start hydrating, right now for that Colorado State game. I know it's a long ways away, but my goodness, I can't even imagine another one of those 2:30 games early in the year. We saw it against Rice last year. But the minute you step outside, you just start drenched in sweat. It's not going to be a fun one until that game, goes 0-0. So hopefully they got some cold ones on deck at DKR so everybody can enjoy it. And of course, the product on the field we expect to be very, very high end at the time.
Hey, Rod, I'll ask you. You went from college to the NFL, and you played college when it was really just a 12-game season, and then a bowl game. Not what we're going to deal with this year with a 12-team playoff, and teams could play 14, 15 games. Did you notice a difference at the professional level when you show up for training camp and it's 4 weeks, and then 16, 17 weeks of the NFL. I mean, it's a different animal. And, Sark at least has experience with that. And a lot of guys on this coaching staff understand that. But, it's a long grind to go from, when they start camp in early August to, if Sark is prophetic, playing January the 20th.
Yeah, and not only what you're talking about, just the more games you play, of course, and that's it's just the wear and tear on your body for any sport. The more you play, but especially football because of the physicality of it. And to speak from my experience when I got to the NFL, hell, man, I only made it through like 2 seasons fully healthy because the physicality of the game obviously played a role in me getting injured a lot of times in my play in the NFL and my time in the NFL. So that's something to consider too. And I think Sark also understands that you're going to play a more physical brand of football in the SEC. You're going to play more games, hopefully, because Texas is going to be really good, playing in the SEC title game, playing in the college football playoff. So you're playing more games, just like the NFL. You're playing a more physical style of football, just kind of like the NFL. And I think that's why his time in the league, he understands, no, we got to play a lot of guys. That's going to deeper in the season. Not only is that going to help us manufacture depth, because give some of the young guys experience, but also when guys get hurt, I'll knock on wood. But it's football. It's inevitable, right? It's coming. You just don't know where it's coming from. And matter of fact, in that conversation that Sark had with Josh Pate, that was a good question by Josh Pate about, the injuries are coming. How do you as a coach, how do you prepare for them? What do you do when you know they're coming? You just don't know exactly when, and you don't know at what position they're going to hit. And Sark said versatility. Right? He said versatility is our key. And I hate to come back to it. I feel like I've been talking about this for the last 4-5 months, but he said it because that's his buzzword for the year, because I think he understands versatility gives you options. Now you're talking about versatility of personnel, that it can help you manufacture depth, moving some of those pieces around, whether you're talking about CJ brought up the offensive line as a point of kind of versatility. That's going to help you manufacture depth. You can move those pieces around if some guys get hurt, but even just to help you come up with better options to put your best 5 on the field. Same thing with the defensive backfield. Jahdae Barron being able to play multiple positions. Makuba, same thing, right? Jalen Gilbo, same thing. That gives you solutions, right? Because if guys get hurt, you can move pieces around, trying to get your best players on the field or the guys who are best for that particular matchup. So Sark has the versatility of personnel, so he's recruiting more versatile pieces. He admitted that finally, and he talked about talked about that buzzword for a while, but I think now he understands. No, it's going to be a part of our philosophy, a part of our ideology in roster building, but also versatility of scheme. This got me even more excited. I was titillated when we talk about versatility of scheme, because nobody's talked about him using more 2 tailback sets and pony package, and using more empty personnel and using 10 personnel, the 1 back, 0 tight ends, because you got a deep wide receiving core. You had that Bama, you call it the red package, bring it back here to Texas and utilize all that speed on the field. Nobody's talked about it more than myself. And I feel like I'm kind of yelling into nowhere, or just the Longhorns fans, kind of football theory, but he's putting it into practice. So he talked about versatility of player personnel and skill set, but also versatility of scheme. And that's going to help you too in terms of, you don't know how your roster is going to look in week 11 or week 12. Week 1, you know how it's going to look. You have no idea how it's going to look in week 11. Texas didn't know Jonathan Brooks. Hell, they didn't know Jonathan Brooks was going to be starting running back. Cedric Baxter won a starting job. Then Jonathan Brooks gets a job, and then Jonathan Brooks get hurt. So your offense changes, the dynamic of it, the personality of the identity of it changes. So you as a coach, you have to be malleable. You got to be versatile. You got to be able to switch it up and figure out, all right, these are the best pieces at this given time. As I always say, football and life, they are both basically situations you got to figure out what you want to be and what you need to be, right, in order to survive. And what you want to be oftentimes is very different than what you need to be. And I think Sark understands that, but being malleable and being versatile enough, you can find solutions. And I that's what I loved about what Sark said. So in terms of them having injuries, everybody's going to have injuries. Do you have the roster construction, the versatility in personnel and in philosophy to be able to absorb it and withstand it?
Well, I mean, the depth is certainly there, CJ. I think, they've done a really nice job of, we talk about most talented rosters to start a season since, you heard, as Rod alluded to, the interview that Sark did last week with Josh Pate of CBS, that, we didn't have the transfer portal 15, 20 years ago. You just had to kind of, just deal with the battle of attrition. A normal season back in the day for Sark would have been, real thin at receiver, thin at tackle. And you just got to kind of deal with it and manufacture that depth. They've been able to attack the portal. And I think that's why Sark and this staff are really excited about where they are. To Rod's point, they're more versatile. They're more dynamic in the back end. They've got guys at receiver that can play different roles. Running back, as Rod said, tight ends, got some guys that can make some things happen on top of what they do on the O-line and at quarterback. And that's where this roster ranks up there pretty high as far as entering a season, talent for talent, player for player. When you got an offensive line like this and quarterbacks in the room and receivers, they're really not deep at any position, but maybe one corner spot. That's pretty good. That's a rare thing in college football, but it's the new era of college football where you don't have to be thin.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, coming off of year in which you have 11 guys drafted and many more depart, it's justifiable to expect a drop-off in talent, a drop-off in guys on the roster to, maintain the level of play in which we just saw Texas make the Final Four, essentially, with that college football playoff berth. That's not the expectation in Austin. I'll tell you what. Those coaches are excited. The players know the goal at stakes. Certainly, Rod, and you've talked about this in the past, but when you get that close to hoisting a national championship trophy and you don't, that whole offseason, all you're thinking about is the plays you could have made, the plays that went the wrong way, that moment of walking off the field in New Orleans, that bus ride and plane ride home back home, to Austin after that, knowing that taste in your mouth was just 12 yards short away from potentially playing in a national championship or even lifting that national championship trophy. So those guys who are a part of that team are very much leading the way to keep that same intensity week in and week out. The offseason going on right now. I know Quinn's back up in Dallas. He's actually in New York, but he's for the rest of this month, he'll be back up in Dallas throwing around, getting some sessions in with some wide receivers in the area, of course. But Texas, again, going out and adding all of these guys via the portal just goes to show that you shouldn't ever have, a down year at these big schools. And I wanted to bring this up from Pick Six Previews. If y'all don't follow them on Twitter, they're a great follow here. But they talk about the top 50 transfers in college football this 2024 cycle. And Texas right up there at the top with 5. And I'm not going to sit here and guess who those 5 were, but I think you can certainly, Isaiah Bond, Andrew Makuba, Trey Morris, some of the guys that Texas added on. Everybody in the country were in on them. They wanted a piece of what these guys could bring. And then you start looking at who else Texas will be playing. They don't have to play Ole Miss this year. Alabama's not on the roster or on the schedule. Georgia is. Kentucky is. Oklahoma, Texas A&M are. There's a lot of guys that they're going to have to go up that have a lot of experience, a lot of production in their college days. Texas, fortunately, at the moment, 5 out of the 50 top 50 transfers. That's pretty good, and it should never be in a time in which the University of Texas is lacking anywhere across their roster because of the portal, because of how attractive the university is, and again, because of NIL and the opportunities that come with the university.
It's good stuff right there. Yeah, 5 in that cycle for the Longhorns, and that leads me to this conversation. Then I want to get to the latest commitment for the Longhorns, CJ. What your plan is for travel and where you're going to be watching high school recruits here coming up. But I wanted to show this. I sent you this graphic. I thought this was interesting because in my mind, and Rod, you and I talked about it when the schedule came out. I think we all looked at it and said, man, Texas got a pretty favorable draw as far as a first-year SEC schedule. And then you see this graphic that I sent to CJ, and it just really crystallizes how fortunate the Longhorns got as far as schedule goes. When you look at this graphic, this is the 2024 SEC over-under win totals with Texas and Georgia at the top. You can make a bet in Vegas if you want, over under 10.5. Then you see 9.5 Alabama, Ole Miss, then the 3 Missouri, LSU, and Tennessee, and A&M. But look down here at the bottom. Those bottom 4, Texas plays all those schools. They also play Kentucky. They play all the bottom 4. They play 5 of the bottom 6 on their schedule. And they only play one, they play Georgia, obviously. But they don't play anybody outside in that top, second and third tier at all. They play A&M, of course, which is, over under 8.5. That jumps out to me that how favorable that is. When you consider that Oklahoma, who's sitting there at 7.5 over under wins, right in the middle of the pack, they play 6 of the 7 that are above them on their schedule this year, where Texas plays 5 of the 6 below OU with Kentucky, Arkansas, Florida, Mississippi State, and Vanderbilt. It just kind of highlights what a great draw Texas got in this year, which is why I think you're hearing Sark talk about January 20th and making sure they've solidified positions. Because I don't know if it's wrong to say here on May the 14th that, it's kind of big. It's 12-team playoff or bust here for me if you're Texas, right? With this roster, if you can't go 10-2 with that schedule, with the bottom rung of the SEC, even if you split with Michigan and Georgia and find one more loss along the way, find a way to beat Georgia or Michigan, stub your toe somewhere, right? Maybe at A&M, Arkansas. I don't know where that's going to be, but you're going to be in the 12-team playoff. Am I wrong to say that if they don't make it to the 12-team playoff, that this year will be a disappointment for Texas based on the schedule, the talent, the depth chart that they've got, and the portal additions that they've made?
I think it absolutely would be.
Yeah, I agree.
Go ahead, Rod.
No, I was just going to say I agree. I think the standard has changed now. There's no doubt, right? Because, we talked about this. We have this hypothetical thought experiment that if the 12-team playoff existed back in Mac's days, how many of Mac's teams would have ended up making the 12-team playoff? And honestly, for Sark, I think it's an easier standard to meet than the one that Mac had. It's kind of an easier standard because I don't know if there was actually a defined one for Mac. The 12-team playoff kind of defines it for you. That gives you a shot at winning the national title. All you do is get into the playoff, and you don't have to win the conference to get in the playoffs. You don't have to necessarily be in your top 4 teams like the college football playoff now in the top 4 teams. You just have to be one of the better teams in the country. And I think for Sark, I'm with you. I think it'll be a disappointment because you bring back your starting quarterback who's supposed to be one of the top 3 best quarterbacks in the country. Your O-line is projected to be one of the top 5 best O-lines in the country. Your wide receiving core is supposed to be one of the top 5 best wide receiving cores in the country, right? You're bringing back a lot of weapons. Your running back room is really loaded with a lot of young talent too. So I think, even if the offense can't become elite and ended up, dragging Texas, even if they have some disappointing losses, to double-digit wins, I'm with you. I think ultimately Longhorn fans would be disappointed if Texas is not represented in the first 12-team playoff. And if not, I think something went wrong, right? Something happened, injury, knock on wood, but something went wrong, or Texas was slapped in the face by the SEC, and the physicality of the SEC was something that Texas struggled with. But I don't see that, right? Because the way Texas is built, Sark is built and constructed the roster with big humans. He's constructed it pretty much inside out offensively, and speed on the outside, mass on the inside. And I think he's constructed it the right way for it to be an SEC worthy roster.
Yeah, that's interesting, PJ. With and now you can judge it if it's 12-team playoff or disappointing season, then it's tiers, right? Are you in the back end, that road team, 9 through 12, or are you 5 through 8 where you're hosting a home game in that 12-team playoff? Did you make the top 4, which gives you the bye week? I mean, that's as much as some people don't like the 12-team playoff or the changes in college football. As just an observer and a fan of the game, I think there's a lot of fun. There's a lot of the discussion there. Can you play your way into the top 8? So even if you're not top 4, you get that home game, that first weekend of the playoff, which would be a lot of fun in middle December. Can you get the bye week, which gets you that advantage? It's a fun conversation, but I do think top 12 or bust for Texas in 2024.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. And I think one game in particular early in Sarkisian's tenure is going to help the Longhorns very much in this first season in the SEC, and it's going on the road to Arkansas in 2021. Texas had high expectations for that year. They have the brand new staff. They got a new quarterback. You got some good pieces. You got a great running back and what you expect to be a solid offense, and you get smacked. And I think that was a wake-up call. And Sarkisian mentioned it when he was first hired. He's like, yeah, our offensive line, not where we wanted it to be. We only have 9 guys on scholarship. We have, almost double that in wide receivers. Why is that the case? And then you go up and you see the physicality of the SEC firsthand on the road. You play in a hostile environment, and things get pretty ugly pretty quickly. And I think that staff is going to look back and say, that's going to be every week now. You have to expect that level of intensity and that level of atmosphere everywhere that you go in the SEC. And I know Texas doesn't have the toughest road slate, but you have to go back up to Fayetteville. You got to go play at Texas A&M. Those 2 games are going to be ridiculously nuts. And I think going to even, Ann Arbor, week 2, playing that style of play while on the road, having that first little taste of that at Arkansas a couple of years ago, I think is going to be a way for this staff to actually kind of come in a little bit more prepared than they would have been if that game never happened. And so I'm looking at that. And again, that top 12, that to me is the baseline for this season. That's the absolute floor for me. Anything below that, then something like you said, Aaron, must have gone catastrophically incorrect for the Longhorns along the way. And I even think that top 12 is attainable if Quinn Ewers goes down. I do think Arch Manning would be able to lead this offense. We saw it happen in the spring game. He lit it up. He had a great game, not even, necessarily running the offense, but just putting the ball where it needed to be. Everything was on time. Everything was on rhythm. He dissected zones very well. And again, I thought anytime that man came up, he put the ball in a place where only his guy can make a play. And if that's the way that Texas makes it into the playoff or has to play the back half of their season, I think you still feel pretty confident as a result of what you have across the board. Good offensive line, a good running game, pieces on the outside that allow you to stretch the defense across the field, and plenty of speed that puts defenses at disadvantages regardless of where the ball is headed.
Hey, Rod, to CJ's point a moment ago about the disappointing end of last year and how close they were to kind of maybe playing Michigan for a national championship, and then who knows what happens. The two losses last year, were excruciatingly painful for the players that are coming back. It's a couple of plays here and there, a couple of missed assignments, fumbles in the third quarter, a couple of missed reads. You played the game. As far as motivation from those guys, understanding, coaches say it all the time. It might be one play that you made a mistake or you didn't play your assignment that cost us the game. There's a lot of plays in a football game, but for an individual player, they understand that one or two plays that really hurt the ball club. How important is that for motivation, for fuel for this? Because to me, the biggest question for the Longhorns is trying to attain these goals is now playing with the expectation that they haven't had as a program in quite a while now. As far as even last year, it was, can they make the Big 12 championship game? If they don't, it's disappointing. But, now they've done it, and now they've achieved. Their two losses were very narrow. To me, it's incumbent upon those guys who, as CJ said, understand the pain of that trip home when you lose that game by a couple of plays. To me, that can be pivotal this summer when we start when they come back in June right after Memorial Day and start getting to work. Those are the motivators of, okay, every single play matters if we want to win a championship.
Yeah, I think that's something that is encapsulated in Sark's theme. I don't know if it's the theme of the team, but he's talked about obsession, right? His obsession now with winning a national title because they were so close. And I think that comes from, basically the 2023 season confirming, reaffirming everything that the coaches have done, all the culture that you have built, the foundation that you have built, it works. Like it worked. Your concepts to build this team and the way you constructed the roster, it worked because it was and I think Longhorn fans appreciate a linear kind of a linear projection. You build it up to a crescendo. You started out with 5 wins, and then you got to 8, and then you got to the college football playoff. So Longhorn fans naturally this year they are expecting you to build on what you did last year, to do even more, then get to the college football playoff and come right there to the precipice of playing for a national title, which Texas did. So I think that's why I think that there are a lot of guys on the team that share his obsession. And I remember a similar obsession on our team when, we proved that we were a good team in 2000 and we were close. And in 2001, a lot of guys had that obsession for a different reason. Ours came from getting blown out by Oklahoma, who won a national title that year. But the offseason, there is an obsession and there is a crystallized focus. Everybody's on the same page because everybody's got the same goal. And the goal is clear. And I think for the team, the goal is clear that they are all now pursuing the perfect rep. And every football player is pursuing the perfect rep. And what you'd like is to do is to be able to replicate the perfect rep over and over again. Now, will you do that? No. But your pursuit of the perfect rep will have you in the realm of excellence, right? Your pursuit of perfection is how you achieve excellence. So I think now a lot of these guys, considering what they got to last year, the level they got to last year, they're going back to the process, right? Because basically what you did last season, it worked. Now you can go back to the process and you can double down on it, right? You can now try to replicate it even more. And for those guys who were that close, now you try to pursue the perfect rep because you were close as a team. But now you're trying to pursue the details, right? That's how you're going to pursue perfection. It's about the details, watching the film. Like you said, there were a couple of plays that held Texas back, a couple of things that held Texas back. Red zone offense held Texas back. Texas pass defense held them back, right? There are certain things, certain elements of football that held you back as a team. And now you want to try to rectify those in the offseason and try as a team to be the best version of yourself. Because last year, even though you weren't the best version of yourself, like I said, red zone offense hurt Texas. They had injuries like everybody will, and injury luck is a big part of it. Pass defense was one of the worst in the country. So you still had a lot of work to do. And look how close you came. Look how close. So it works. The system works, right? The system, now they believe, that everybody believes, the coaches, the players, everybody now involved knows that, okay, the system, the culture, the foundation we built, it works. Now, how do we increase that in achievement, right? How do we push the ceiling even more and push the standard even more?
Well, and I have to think, Rod, that to carry that point one step further, the players, even if there were guys that weren't a part of that team or were, if the obsession is not across the board, this is the players holding players accountable thing, right? If there are guys through the summer that aren't playing to the standard, this goes back to the VY thing from 2004 into 2005, right? That they, hey, if you're falling out of line, not doing your stuff, the players are going to be the ones policing that and monitoring that. To me, and you've been a part of it, that's when really exciting things happen. When if someone isn't putting in the time or isn't playing with that obsession, it's not the coaches that get on them, it's the players.
Yeah, and I think they have that right now. I think they do. I think they have a player-led team. And a lot of these guys, they understand the culture, and they're taking pride in making it habitual. I talked to these young guys during the Third and Longhorns podcast. Shout out to Nick Shuley and Fozzie Whitaker, Jeremy Hills, and Alex Okafor and Derek Johnson, the crew. But these guys, the way they speak about it being habitual, everyday process, to be obsessed with the everyday process of it. Whether that be, weight room, practicing, film, and even off the field, how you approach your studies. Sark talked about this, how the GPA, he doesn't think it's a coincidence that the GPA has gotten better as they as a team has gotten better. Yeah. He said that's not a coincidence, guys. He said, guys, now you have, and this is an old Nick Saban thing, right? You want high achievers. And high achievers don't like mediocre people. And mediocre people don't like high achievers. Don't put them in the same room together. Get the mediocre people out of here, get none but high achievers in there, and they'll start pushing each other and competing with each other in all aspects of life, not just on the field, in the locker room. And I think that's where Sark believes he's got now a lot of high achievers on this team, and guys that even in the classroom, they want to be high achievers, even away from the football field as citizens of society with NIL, what they can do in the community. They want to be high achievers. And that is the goal, right? To represent the brand in that manner. So they got an impressive group of young men over there. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. It's an impressive group. I think there's a reason why you don't see. I mean, Texas, obviously, young guys are gonna make dumb decisions. It happens, right? We just have the Samaje Burrell thing, and it happens. I mean, guys are just young. Trust me, I made so many bad decisions as a young person, and that was even in my 30s still. All right, now in my 40s, so I'm making some better decisions. But for the most part, you haven't had a lot of players that have kind of run amok and making bad decisions that have been, highlighted for Texas, because they do have a culture that is kind of self-regulating. Guys in the locker room holding each other accountable. You're going to have those, but I'm saying I don't think Texas has had as many as they've had in some years. Whether they've had success on the field or not, you've had those stories. Texas hadn't had a lot of those under Sark, and I think there's a reason for it.
Yeah, and I think a little bit of that stems from their high school recruitments and who they're pursuing. A lot of these cats that they end up signing won state championships in high school, or they were a part of big-time programs. We've talked about the pipeline from DeSoto or Duncanville, guys that, they live and breathe being a high school athlete, but with the mindset of being able to go play college football. That's their goal, that's their expectation. They run those programs like colleges do. You're up at 7 a.m., you go to school, you come back, and you do weight training, you're on the field, or you're watching film. So you look at the 25 class right now, you have a commitment from KJ Lacey, state championship. You just took a commitment yesterday from Jackson Christian. made it state twice, lost in 2022, won last year. So taking kids from good programs helps you carry on that, culture and that locker room mentality of, hey, we've all got to be here for the greater good, the benefit of the program and not for the individual. And right now we're continue to see that grow and really become the main theme of this Texas locker room under Steve Sarkisian.
Great stuff, guys. Let me tell you about On Texas Football's Tuesday live stream, brought to you each Tuesday by Texas Electricity Ratings. And, of course, we appreciate them very, very much. If you're still living in Texas and watching here in the great state, you're in the major market cities that are deregulated with their electricity, like Dallas, like Houston, you very well understand the deregulated electricity market can be confusing. It can be beneficial to your pocketbook and your bottom line. It can also lead you into troubled waters if you're not careful. That's where Texas Electricity Rating comes in. It is a website, a shopping website that lets you compare the prices, read customer reviews, find the electricity that fits your needs. Also filters out the gimmicky plans on websites like Power to Choose that what they're just going to do is trick you into expensive bills and a plan that you really don't want to be in. So if you're in the market for a new electricity plan in a deregulated area of Texas, please shop TexasElectricityRatings.com. That's TexasElectricityRatings.com/OTF for all of your electricity needs. Remember, you do the /OTF, and they say hook them. We appreciate them. Texas Electricity Ratings. Guys, hey, CJ, tell us about the newest Longhorn commitment on the recruiting trail. You broke that yesterday, and that story dropped. Another big human out of the Golden Triangle area, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. A little 409 action out of Port Neches Groves. That's been a good school for Texas, dating back a little bit. Of course, Roshan Johnson. You talk about guys that are all for the team, all for the program. Jackson Christian, I love his tape. He climbs to the second level very well. He can move. He's athletic. Of course, he's a big body. He's a big human. 6'5", 310 at the moment. Has the wingspan, has the athleticism to play tackle. Suits more so like a guard at the next level. He's even open to playing center. I think you'll see him as a guard, but you talk to him a little bit and he's all business. He's a guy that there's not much to laugh about. I'm here for business. I came to see what I wanted to see, and I'm off to the next task at hand, whatever that might be. I saw him at April 13th when he was back here on campus, and yeah, he liked what he saw from Kyle Flood, who had recruited him all the way back to about this time a year ago. They had a great relationship. A number of schools started to filter in after Texas kind of created a little cranny for them a little bit in this recruitment. And of course, that relationship just paid off. And credit to Kyle Flood, a guy that Texas offered very early in the process. He didn't have many offers at the moment, and whenever Texas did get after him, but certainly one in which you could look back and say, yeah, there's a big reason for Kyle Flood's success recruiting, and that's relationships and its evaluations early on. So good addition, a good start to the offensive line class of 2025, who I believe is going to be a really, really talented group of 5, maybe 6 prospects when it comes down to it at the end of the day.
Nice.
Yeah, Rod, I know you talk to Coach Shipley all the time on the midday show, and it's interesting to me. I go back to Sark at the end of the spring game, talking about Trey Owens, the quarterback, and Sark will take a subtle shot here and there because he's like, we don't chase stars, we trust our evaluation on guys.
Yeah,
we noticed that he rose in the ratings after we got onto him. We trust the player. That it does give Longhorn fans confidence that they're not chasing stars at all, right? They're really watching tape, evaluating the tape, and looking for what CJ's talking about from a guy who is a 3-star recruit right now, but much like Trey Owens, plays bigger than that, and they rely on what they see with their eyes, with their evaluation. And so far, in 3.5 into the 4th year, this staff's done a real good job of evaluating and finding the best players.
Yeah, they evaluate guys that not only fit their scheme, but they believe that they project their skill sets that can be guys that can play on Sundays. That's part of their evaluation too. Guys who have a really, really high ceiling, and sometimes those guys may not necessarily be ranked that high at the time, as you brought up with Trey Owens. And one thing I liked that we saw, we saw Jeff Banks bring this up on Longhorn Network. Also, just because a guy is a 5-star or a blue chip recruit, if they don't have certain character traits, if they don't have certain football characteristics that the coaches like, as Jeff Banks said, then we're not going to recruit them, right? They're looking for signs, as he said, and that's signs that they're going to be compatible with the culture at Texas. Signs they're going to be someone who can fit if the coaches get signs of respect, signs of a lot of different signs they're looking for. So if they don't see that, or they don't see enough of those, then even if you're a blue chip recruit, then Texas is not going to recruit you. And Jeff Banks said, if there's a really good player that we're not recruiting, it's probably because we didn't see the signs about that specific player. So, and Sark recently brought up in the interview with Josh Pate, he said, man, we're not going to sacrifice character for talent. We won't do it. We're not going to do it. He said, even today, we're not going to do it. So even getting back to what you said, yes, they trust their evaluation. They're not looking at necessarily stars when it comes to players who are lower rated players, who are not blue chip players, who still may check all those boxes. They may see the signs that they fit all the characteristics and the traits that Texas wants. But on the other end of that, although a player may be rated high and does, have a blue chip status, if he doesn't check all the boxes and they don't see the signs with that young man, then they're not going to recruit him. Doesn't mean he's a bad person. Doesn't mean that, he's not going to be a great player. Just doesn't mean he's not the fit at Texas. That's right. It's like I dated a lot of women like that. Then, just because, you don't want to date somebody or you break up doesn't mean that they're never going to find a partner and not going to be a great partner and a great wife or whatever. It just means they want the right fit for you. They're not the right fit for me. And I think that's what Texas is looking at when they're recruiting. Are they the right fit for us, whether that be with the skill set or whether it be with the football character? We need to see both.
Yeah, I like that a lot. CJ, what's the roadmap for the recruiting summer? I mean, we know, summers have become gangbusters for Texas. I mean, the calendar has sped up, obviously, with the early signing window and trying to get ahead of it for the season and the pool parties and all the things that come. I know it's kind of the coaches are out recruiting, players are away. But as we're now mid-May, what's kind of the roadmap for June into July?
Yeah, it's all about the summer official visits in the month of June. Right now, 43 are locked in for the Texas Longhorns staff, 9 of which actually coming from the state of California, which is not something that we've seen all too often out of the West Coast. Of course, Texas has a bunch of ties there. Chris Jackson, Jeff Banks, Sarkisian, and now Johnny Nansen, who has already made a strong impact with his recruiting prowess for this Texas football team. Of course, Texas has 7 commits in the class. I put up an article earlier today on Texas football. We see Texas go on runs in the month of June, and that kind of ranges on into the month of July as well. 2023 cycle, Texas took 13 commitments in the month of June alone. 2024, we saw 11 commitments from June 17th to July 11th. So they like going on runs. They like building that class ahead of fall camp when these guys get back on the campus and all attention turns toward the upcoming season. I think you're going to see this class double in size at the very least by the time July wraps up. I think you'll see it, kind of creep up there close to about 18 or 19 potentially, with a few spots open for guys that kind of drag it out into the season who want to truly evaluate. But right now, 7 guys in the bag, and I think you look at it and you say, all right, I'm pretty happy across the board. Lance Jackson, Brandon Brown, leading the way in the front 7, Elijah Barnes as well. Now you've got all phases on the offensive side kind of figured out as well. You got a quarterback, you got a running back, you got a tight end, and you just started your first offensive lineman as well. So Texas in a great spot right now for a number of wide receivers as well. I know that's kind of been a hot topic where they're going to end up going. DeCorian Moore, Jamie French, Kelshawn Johnson, Khalid Clockett. You land 3 of the 4 there, you're in a really good spot for your wide receiver class. And then, of course, the big questions kind of end up in the secondary as well. That's kind of been a recurring theme. But to the point, where do they end up going? Right now, they've got a lot of talent. I think they have 6, 7 DBs right now locked in for official visits. Dorian Brew, one of the big ones. Texas in good spot for him. So we'll see by the end of June. But right now, I think that recruiting class will certainly see some more fireworks as the summer months get going.
Interesting. CJ, is there, I know 2 years ago it was Arch Manning, or 2 summers ago, last summer it was Colin Johnson and Brandon Baker, the 5 stars. I mean, is there a kind of a bell cow? I mean, I did left out Anthony Hill with Arch Manning on the defensive side, but is there a couple guys that Longhorn fans should be watching, that are kind of that lead Pied Piper kind of player, or is this more just a, filling gaps, filling need positions, and how do you see that playing out in the next couple of months?
Yeah, it's actually funny. I think some of the big guys Texas fans, would normally be over the moon for are really quiet. So you don't see a lot of them in the media. You don't see many clips of them working out. Lance Jackson's a guy who comes to mind where on a given year, if he lived inside the DFW Metroplex, that's a guy who probably has a 5th star. That's a guy who Texas fans, I think, would be a little bit more excited about. He's very talented. Brandon Brown, I know his rating isn't the highest at the moment. Again, you hold on to him, you have a very good start to your defensive line class. So they've got good pieces right now. Now, who are those guys that are going to really attract other guys to come play with? Well, DeCorian Moore is one of them. Michael Fasusi is another. And then Texas starts going out a little bit more. Of course, Elijah Bo Barnes was recruiting Riley Pettijohn at the spring game, telling him to commit on the spot. We want you in the class. That speaks very loudly to me. You know, Elijah Barnes is a guy, very likable, great personality. You're able to speak with him and understand why he chose Texas. That trickles down to some guys whenever you really get to know him as well. So where else do they go? I'm not sure you have a guy in that back end of the secondary right now that you're recruiting that has a lot of pull. Of course, Dorian Brew would be that guy, but Cade Phillips, Caleb Chester, some quieter guys. Devin Williams committed to Auburn at the moment. We'll see what happens there. Coming in June 21st through 23rd, I'll be interested to see if Texas is able to make some headway in that recruitment. But the edges, all of them out of state for the most part, aside from Lance Jackson. Hayden Lowe, Damian Shanklin, Marco Jones from California, all of them coming in for official visits. Smith Orogbo out of the Houston area as well. So there's not a whole lot of guys right now that can certainly act as your big-time guy to lead the charge on this inside the state, unless they're already in the class at the moment.
All right, interesting. Recruiting into the summer, always big. And Rod, I mean, is it fair to say, as we talked earlier about, big, college football playoff, 12-team or bust, important when they get back to right after Memorial Day, when they hit the ground running. Sark has talked about the ability to be with those guys, get connected with those guys, the new, the young freshman players that weren't here early show up. That's a big stretch here when we start looking forward to what's coming June into July. That becomes kind of the glue, kind of the mortar for what this team will become. And to me, that's, we've talked about it a lot about Quinn Ewers, establishing, taking that leadership role where, 2 years ago, it was really Bijan and Roshan in the running back room. Last year, Jalen Ford, Tavondre Sweat, Byron Murphy, those guys really led the way. It'll be interesting for me to hear and follow you guys and the insiders on, is it Quinn? Is it Quinn grabbing this thing by the horns and taking it, all pun intended, by the way, and running with this thing? And then, the Jahdae Barons on defense. I mean, that's critical for this program to reach the heights they want to go.
They're replacing some, critical pieces, right, in terms of the leadership on this team. Some really important elements, as you brought up. And, there's no doubt. I mean, Sark, when he was asked about what he's most concerned about in terms of what could derail Texas's hopes and their aspirations, he said the chemistry between Quinn and the wide receivers, right? The chemistry between them, because you have so many new wide receivers. You had 3 of them drafted. You lost basically all your skill talent on offense. You lost your starting tight end. You lost your bell cow running back and Jonathan Brooks. It was great. All of them got drafted. All your 3 wide receivers got drafted. But now you got to replace all that production. And it makes sense, right? When Sark was asked about the things that most concerns him about this team in the 2024 season, he brought up wide receivers and the chemistry with Quinn, replacing all that production from last season. And they got 3 receivers in the transfer portal: Bond, Golden, and Bolden. Right, so he made sure that whatever areas of concern that he had, he addressed them with urgency in the transfer portal. He also brought up the interior D-line, and then we see him having to replace the interior D-line with 3 different pieces via the transfer portal. But getting back to Quinn, there's no doubt Quinn, he's got the keys to the practice fields. Only the quarterbacks get them. They don't give them to the D. They don't give them to DBs and D linemen. Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy didn't have keys to the practice facility. Quarterback can go in there and get into the practice fields whenever he wants to. Go turn on the lights and get throwing sessions in. It can be 2, 3 in the morning, and he can get out there. I'm sure Arch has his keys too. But yeah, I mean, that's what you need Quinn to do. He should have throwing sessions daily with every one of those wide receivers. Now, you can't get all of them out there at once, but he should at least have a couple of guys out there every day, fitting into their schedule, getting throwing sessions in. And I know how obsessed I've got a couple of friends of mine who are really good friends who are quarterbacks, and they're obsessed with throwing. I mean, day go by, it's like, man, I gotta go throw. If you're really good friends with a quarterback, then you know how often you got to go catch for a quarterback who just wants to go throw. Man, I got to go throw. I got to get some throws in. And I know Quinn's probably obsessed, just like all the QBs. He should be throwing daily with those wide receivers, getting the timing down, finding out how he likes each route to be ran. The wide receivers finding out how he likes to throw different routes based on the leverage, how he likes to throw the post route, how he likes to throw the 9, the post corner. Does he like it on a line? Does he like it, with some air under it? Where does he want the D? Where does he want you to set up the DB? Would he rather him be on the upfield shoulder, or would he rather you put some space in between? All those little types of things, man. He should be throwing the rock with those guys, and the chemistry and continuity shouldn't be a concern by the time the season starts, since you have a third-year veteran in this offense.
Yeah, I saw that message on the chat there. Vincent Paul had the keys to the
keys, baby. Yeah, you got the keys to the whole place, man. You can go open it up. You can go there and hang out late night after you come from downtown, kicking it, and go watch film. You can do that. You're that dedicated. You're the QB, baby. You can do whatever you want. You got free reign.
All right, Juan, we appreciate the super chat there. That's great stuff. At CJ, do you think Brockermeyer boys regret going to Alabama? Should they have committed to Texas because of flood? I think it was a bad move by them. Thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's certainly unfortunate that their careers haven't panned out the way in which I think we all envisioned them to. Injuries aren't part of the game, and I know Tommy just medically retired as well. It's unfortunate. It's easy now to look back in hindsight and say, yeah, I mean, should have come to Texas. They're on the ups. They got the coaching staff. They got Kyle Flood. At the time, though, there wasn't a whole lot of momentum for Texas here. And, of course, Alabama, for the last 15 years, was the it school in college football. So I can't blame the Brockermeyers for picking Alabama. I know it's easy now to kind of look back and say, well, you don't have Nick Saban. Texas just made the college football playoff. Well, so did Alabama. And now they have a coach who also made the college football playoff. So I think it's a bit of bad luck, obviously. It's tough to look back and say, knowing what we know now, they made the wrong decision when, again, it was their recruitment. They were very, very heavily coveted by a number of big programs. And, I mean, I think, that's just a bad luck of the draw there.
Well, and also, if you want to go revisionist, Rod, that, the Quinn Ewers decommitment, the Brockermeyers with a brother that was playing in the locker room at Texas at the time as a walk-on, having no interest in Texas. And, it really helped, I think, the Texas program grow, because I think those were some of the strikes against Tom Herman that led to the end for Tom Herman. Obviously, the eyes of Texas flap and all that stuff politically was a part of it. But, those were the bigger signs that things were not going well, even though, they had won the Sugar Bowl and, so Tom Bowl Herman was winning bowl games. I mean, those were really signs for CDC and the brass that if we're going to move to the SEC, we need to upgrade that. And we can't even recruit the Brockermeyers, who their father's in the Longhorn Hall of Honor. We can't even get a foot in the door there. And those were, you could argue that was a positive for the direction of the program to force the change that has led to where we're talking about it now.
Yeah, you get fired for losing games or losing your locker room. And I don't necessarily think Tom Herman was fired so much for losing games as he was so much fired for losing his locker room. All right. And I think that was something that had a domino effect for him, and we won't rehash it and get into it. But yeah, Texas had culture problems at that point. That's why Sark, what he's done with the culture is so impressive, because Texas A&M got culture problems right now. That's why they brought in Elko, right? They had to get rid of Jimbo Fisher. Like, man, they got culture problems. Talent necessarily wasn't an issue. They had talent there. You could argue maybe the coaching need to be more progressive, need to modernize some of the concepts offensively. Different discussion for a different day. But culture was toxic there. And that was, Aggies that admitted that. The culture was really toxic there. And for Longhorns, we've experienced that. Under Tom Herman, the culture was toxic. You had players on the team that weren't advocating for recruits to come to Texas. That's supposed to be the biggest advocates for the program. The best salesmen for the program are the people in the program. Players in the program right now. That's why you have this wave of guys wanting to come to Texas, because the guys that are in the program now, they are the best salesmen. They're authentic, they are genuine, and they're selling it with passion. And they're selling it with fire in their heart, in their soul. They are, because I would say there are two types of football players, right, that play at the University of Texas. All right. There are the guys that come to play for Texas and the guys that come to play at Texas. And the guys that come to play for Texas, they want to know what they can do to help the University of Texas to leave it better than they found it. And the guys that come to play at Texas, they just want to know what the university can do for them. Right? Okay, can you hook me with the NIL money as much as I can? I'll get your money, but they want to know what the program can do for them. What are the perks that I can get from the program? And I think now they got more for Texas guys than at Texas guys. And the for Texas guys are converting the at Texas guys. And those are the guys who are selling the program. And they're recruiting more for Texas guys instead of the at Texas guys. And they're weeding out the guys who want to come here to play at Texas. Like, no, you ain't the right one. We want guys that come to play for Texas. So like I said, it's amazing where the culture has swung in just a few years. But you know what? It's so intentional because and CJ, we talked about this too. Is there a time you hear Sark speak to the media where he doesn't bring up culture? Unsolicited. You just start talking about it on his own. You can ask him about some of the video. Hey, what about the linebackers, coach? Well, the culture here, I'm telling you, is amazing. It has really helped our linebackers. Like, he is so focused on it that I think, he's telling the guys, he's talking to the guys about it every day because we hear about it every time. And I'm not trying to mock him. I think it's amazing. I think it's great. I think you get what you emphasize, and he's emphasizing culture. And the guys now, they have emphasized it and prioritizing it too. And I think maybe, it is paying off. Not maybe, it is paying off for Texas.
And the other thing with Sarkisian is everything sounds genuine. Everything sounds like he truly means what he's saying. Whereas, it may not have been the case under the last regime. So that's the other thing is, Sarkisian, the way he speaks about things, the way that he carries about his business, and again, the way that he talks about his culture. To me, I truly believe that he believes what he's preaching, which again trickles down to recruits when they see clips on social media, when they meet with him in person, they know that it's not a facade. It's the same person that they're seeing on TVs and doing the interviews and, talking to Josh Pate or TNT or whoever's hosting the big games, whatever it might be. It all adds up at the end of the day, and that's why you're seeing so many top-end prospects choose the Longhorns, whereas years past, Texas had an issue at times holding on to big guys in their own backyard or even in the state of Texas.
Yep.
Appreciate that super chat. It's funny. Reminds me that it just jogs my mind. I know there was a couple years ago where on the morning show I was hosting at the time, we had Chris Beard on the show every week. Chris Beard would come on and talk Texas basketball in his first year. And it was funny. One time he was like, I asked him about Sark, and he said, man, I love going over to Sark's practices. So it's like a Ted Lasso episode every time I'm over there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, now I hear it, and I'm like, yeah, it's kind of it's corny. It's kind of how it is. But even Chris Beard was like, man, who is this guy? He's always positive. He's always upbeat. I mean, what are you, Ted Lasso? I mean, which, that's funny. It's quippy at some level, but, even Beard was noticing, and I'm sure, in Chris Beard, he was kind of rolling his eyes about it, but, it's genuine. And that's the thing that I think over 3.5 into 4 years now, fans have come to realize with Sark and recruits that it might be a little corny to some people, but it's real. I mean, it's a genuine thing. And, you could compare it to Ted Lasso in that it's just, there's a positivity about it. There's a belief in culture is important, and, playing for one another is important. And I love how Rod said it. And then you followed it up, CJ, that the players are the ones that are the receiver of it, right? They're the ones now controlling their locker room and controlling how things operate. That's really, that's a fun thing to watch. If someone, Rod, you played in it, CJ, you've covered it a long time. I have, we've seen it where it's just completely splintered and it's not pretty at all. The opposite is also true. When it feels like it's genuine, I think of the Christian Jones comments with the Arizona Cardinals this week at minicamp, that, we've gotten rid of the anchors and it's all oars now. We've gotten rid of those, things were holding us back and we're just all rowing together. Boy, when a former player says that, when he's at his introductory news conference, for his new pro team, that's pretty impressive that, that they're trying to take that into their new locker room and understand that there are anchors and there are wars. There are guys who are pulling in the same direction, guys who are playing tug of war, and you can't win with the tug of war guys.
Yep. Energy vampires. You don't want them right there. Nope. That's the term. You
don't
want those guys in the program. I think now they have just the attitude. And you're right about Sark. He even said that when he was asked about transfer portal, right? How do you make your culture, your program, attractive, so that you can appeal to players in the transfer portal. And how do you make sure that, your guys aren't always leaving to go to the transfer portal? And he just said, we just got to make it as tough as possible for them to want to leave. He said that when they leave, it's painful for them. that they feel like, oh man, I'm hurt that I have to leave here. It's something that makes me sad that I have to do, because I don't want to leave the University of Texas, because I'm happy here as a person, but as a football player, I might have to leave just because I got to go play. I want to play. My path to play isn't here at Texas. And, that was the case for a guy like Malik Murphy, right? That was one of those groups where he said it. He's like, man, I hate to leave. I don't want to leave. I got to leave. I don't want to leave, but I don't really have a path to play here at Texas. And I think ultimately that is, showcasing Sark's sentimental side toward the player, him as a player's coach, that now we want the guys to have a good experience no matter what it is. Academics, NIL, on the field, getting developed, have a chance to make the league, all that. And we want to make it just tough for them to leave. That's his mentality now. And that's his, what he said, his approach now to the transfer portal. I'm just going to make it really hard for them to leave. And if they want to leave after that, ain't nothing I can do about it. I gave as much as I could. I tried to give that player as best opportunity as I could, no matter what the situation was, and they still want to leave. He said, then I don't feel bad about it. He said, and I'm honest with them. He said, I'm honest with them. He said, and I try to give them the best possible shot. And when they want to leave, I just have to congratulate them and wish them the best. He said, but after that, you have no regret, because I did everything I could.
Yeah, that's good. Rod, we haven't talked since last Tuesday. I know you've probably talked about it on Texas Football Channel here. But Terrence Brooks' decision to go to Illinois, good for him. And what do you think that is for? I mean, it's the Big Ten. We've seen Illinois, produce some top players at that position. What do you think led Terrence to Illinois?
Illinois has got a pretty good rep of producing NFL defenders now, and the defensive back position. So I think it's a connection. I mean, his dad is pretty, let's be honest, his dad is pretty connected. Chet Brooks, in terms of the coaching community, he is a kind of a DB footwork coach, and he's a good guy. But if I had to bet on it, and I haven't done enough research, this is my theory, spitballing, I'd bet his dad had some kind of connection there, and at least knew the coaching staff to be able to vet the coaches about the development he would have there and about how he would be developed. So they have faith in it, and he's a good. I mean, I always thought Terrence Brooks has a guy with a skill set to play in the NFL. Like, he's got a Sunday skill set. Whether he can reach that ceiling, that's a whole different discussion altogether. But I like Terrence Brooks as a player. I really did. I mean, I thought I still think he was going to end up starting here at Texas, even over Gavin Holmes when it was all said and done. He didn't feel that way, or maybe he just didn't feel like he fit here at Texas anymore. It wasn't being developed here at Texas. Whatever the reason, he felt like there were greener pastures for him at Illinois. So I wish it well, because I liked him as a player. But for Texas, yeah, no doubt, man, leaves a hole. He's the guy that was a starter for you. And now at that cornerback opposite Malik Muhammad, and we know they want to rotate in the secondary, which we can talk about a little bit more too, but they want to rotate guys in the secondary. And now at the cornerback position, you got, Malik Muhammad, you got Gavin Holmes. Javion Cole, they just brought him in. So in terms of guys that can rotate, Jahdae Barrett, I guess you can throw in that rotation of corners too. Maybe Jalen Gilbo, that's for your three spots, the left, right, boundary, field, or the nickel spot. So, yeah, I mean, the truth is, we don't know how Javion Cole is going to project. We hope he's going to project. He looks like he's a guy that's gotten better every year and will be able to contribute in a positive way for Texas. You hope Gavin Holmes takes another step this year. But if those guys don't take another step and you end up with a liability on that cornerback spot opposite Malik Muhammad, you better have solutions ready to go. You better have contingency plans ready to go. And I think the first one would probably be move Jahdae Barrett out there and see if you trust Jalen Gilbo enough to just put him at that nickel spot, or move Makuba down to the nickel. Maybe you like your safeties a lot, and you got Taft Daddy, you got Derek Williams. Say you like a young Jelani McDonald, you can put him at the safety. You better have contingency plans ready to go in case those guys don't step up to the plate at that cornerback spot.
It's good stuff. All right, guys. Any other super chats, CJ, as we roll forward on this Tuesday night live stream on the On Texas Football Channel? If there are, fire them our way. By the way, we're rooting for our buddy Matt, normally produces the show. He's dealing with some tornadic issues there in Florida, and crossing our fingers for he and his neighborhood and everybody there. A lot of folks here that watch and participate are, rooting are dealing with spring storms and flooding and everything we've seen. It's been a crazy spring here weather-wise, and we're rooting for our guy Matt for sure. He'll be back with us as soon as he can. But guys, good stuff. Any other topics you want to jump on as we approach the end of our hour?
Oof, man. Well, it's always interesting whenever we're at this part of the year because it's kind of a wait and see, for, what the next big news is. Of course, Texas in the portal, maybe waiting for who the next, prospect is that could fit their scheme, fit their program. Right now, I think they're tapping the brakes just a little bit on the pursuit of Johnny Bowens. Of course, he was an option, a name that was brought up a little bit about a week ago in regards to Texas potentially going that route in the defensive line room as well. They have multiple scholarships, multiple spots available in their 85. Will they go after a punter? Will they go after maybe a linebacker or a defensive back? We'll see, but right now I think they're waiting and seeing, the grades potentially for someone like Johnny Bowens later on this year, this cycle, if he is the best fit for the Longhorns with that spot.
All right. Well, that was a name that we talked about previously, Johnny Bowens out of Converse Judson, originally playing at Oregon right now, and he's in the portal. We'll keep an eye on that. Guys, good stuff, though. If there are no more super chats, we're good to wrap.
That's it.
Brought to you by Texas Electricity Ratings. Fun stuff on a Tuesday night. Obviously, we'll be looking forward to the final Texas baseball series. Can we say props to Texas Athletics, who have now, with the track and field, performance over the weekend, they've won 14 Big 12 championships this year. The calendar year is ridiculous. 14 Big 12 championships. The next closest, Oklahoma State, with 4.
Yeah.
And the rest of the conference combined doesn't get to 14. Safe to say the Longhorns have kind of lapped the field on their way out and are ready for the SEC. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and then that goes to that question. I know we're getting ready to end it, but Daniel says, is the target on Texas back bigger in the SEC than it was in the Big 12? Of course it is. The more successful Texas is, the bigger the target and the more people that are going to be coming out to Texas. That's the beauty of the whole damn thing. That's the beauty of it. That this Texas, everybody's going to want a piece of Texas in that SEC. And yes, you remember you got everybody best shot in the Big 12. Oh man, it's been decades. Some of these programs never ever played Texas, and they get to play Texas at their peak. Yeah, man. Everybody's going to be ready for that Texas game. Not only your rivals, it's going to be the one they circle, but there are a lot of other programs that's going to circle that game too, because everybody wants to be. Hell, you don't think Kirby Smart won a piece of Steve Sarkisian? You don't think he started everybody talking about Sark and how great his offense is, his offensive mind? You don't think Kirby Smart was a go? You don't think he's been coming up with defensive little cheat codes and little concepts just for Sark? Yes, he has. He's been waiting on this one. Trust me on that, folks. Hell, last time Kirby Smart played Texas, they lost. Hey, trust me, he's been waiting on this one. He's been waiting on it. All right, so he ain't the only one, man. I guarantee he ain't the only one. Kentucky, there's a Stoops there. Ain't there a Stoops there?
There's a Stoops there.
Oh, man, the whole damn Stoops family that got together over the offseason. They got, we're going to get together. We're gonna take down these horns one more time. Yeah, hey, trust me, it's going to be fun, but ain't no doubt it's going to be more and more teams coming after Texas to take down the burnt orange, and I can't wait. I can't wait.
I'm with you on that, especially with all the hype they're going to receive leading into their first year, preseason top 3, 4, whatever they're going to be. Quinn for the Heisman and all that. You're right about that, because just as volatile as it was on the way out of the Big 12 is going to be welcome to the SEC from all the established schools, including the ones you mentioned, Rod. Obviously A&M, Arkansas. They want a piece of Texas in every sport. That's good stuff. And again, we're only 48 days. Not that we're counting. 48 days to the Longhorns move to the SEC official. I think we're 60-some days to SEC Media Days, and we're off and running, gents. Good stuff, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks to Texas Electricity Ratings. CJ, great stuff. Rod, great stuff. I know it'll be back up with coffee and football tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock with Bobby, Jerry, and the crew, and it never stops here. The Texas football conversation is ongoing and continuous on the On Texas Football channel. Appreciate everybody who's making it the fastest growing YouTube channel and Texas sports channel out there. We appreciate you very, very much. Everybody have a great Tuesday night.
Welcome.